You don't notice it at first. Not because it isn't happening, but because it doesn't feel dramatic enough to question. Everything still looks normal. Same conversations, same people, same routines. But somewhere along the way, something inside you stops syncing with all of it. And that's where it gets strange. Because on paper, you're improving. You're more disciplined, more aware, more intentional. But emotionally, you feel slightly out of place in your own life. Not lost, not broken, just no longer fitting the way you used to. And here's the part nobody prepares you for. You didn't lose people. You lost alignment with a version of life you used to belong to. And that should scare you, because it doesn't feel like progress at first. It feels like quiet separation. Most people assume growth makes life fuller, but sometimes it just makes life quieter. And that silence, that's where confusion begins. Because you expect discipline to feel empowering. You expect change to feel exciting. But instead, you start noticing distance everywhere. Not from others first, from yourself. From the version of you that used to belong there. And once you notice it, you can't unsee it. Nobody tells you this early enough. Growth doesn't announce itself. It doesn't arrive with clarity or celebration. It starts as friction. You begin rejecting things you used to accept without thinking. You wake up earlier. You spend more time alone. You think differently about how your time is used. And slowly, your environment stops feeling automatic. Not because it changed, but because you changed how you move through it. And here's the truth most people miss. You don't outgrow your life in one moment. You outgrow it in thousands of small decisions that nobody else notices. And that's why it feels so isolating. Because nothing dramatic happens. No confrontation, no ending. Just a slow misalignment between who you are becoming and what still surrounds you. It doesn't feel like leaving. It feels like fading. You're still present, still responding, still showing up. But internally, you are no longer fully there. Because your attention has moved. Your priorities have shifted. Your standards have changed. And suddenly, old conversations feel heavier than they used to. Not because they're wrong, but because they no longer match your internal direction. And this is the part that confuses most people. Nothing broke, but everything feels different. You start realizing something uncomfortable. You are no longer the same person in the same world, but nobody around you received that update. So you begin to feel like a translation error in your own life. This is the part nobody prepares you for. Growth is always sold as gain, more discipline, more clarity, more success. But rarely is it honest about what gets removed. You lose ease. You lose certain connections. You lose versions of yourself that required no effort to maintain. And that creates a quiet grief. Not dramatic, not visible, just persistent. Because part of you remembers when life required less awareness to feel connected. When you didn't have to explain your mindset just to exist around others. Now everything feels slightly translated and exhausting in a way you can't easily describe. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Sometimes, growth doesn't feel like becoming more. It feels like becoming alone. This is where most people collapse without realizing it. They assume something is wrong. They assume they're becoming disconnected. So they do the easiest thing. They return. Not forward, backward. Back to habits they already outgrew. Back to environments they were trying to leave. Back to versions of themselves that required less emotional effort. Because belonging is powerful. Stronger than ambition, stronger than discipline, stronger than long-term vision. And in that moment, comfort wins. Not because it is better, but because it is familiar. There is a difference nobody teaches clearly. Loneliness and solitude are not the same thing. Loneliness is disconnection from others, but solitude is connection to yourself. Loneliness asks, "Why don't I fit anymore?" Solitude answers, "Because you are no longer supposed to." One creates panic. The other creates direction. But at first, they feel identical. And that is why so many people retreat. They confuse clarity for isolation. But listen carefully. Not every feeling of isolation is a warning. Some of them are confirmation. Becoming better is not just about what you gain. It is about what you stop accepting. There will be moments where silence feels heavier than noise, where the old version of your life feels easier than the one you're building. And that's where most people misjudge transformation. They think discomfort means wrong direction. But sometimes, discomfort is just unfamiliar alignment. You are not losing your life. You are losing access to the version of you that required less from yourself. And that will always feel like absence before it feels like strength. But if you stay long enough, something shifts. You stop seeking constant validation. You stop trying to fit into spaces that no longer fit you. And slowly, you begin to trust yourself. Not because life got easier, but because you stopped abandoning yourself to make life easier for others. So, if you feel it, that distance, that quiet separation, that unexplained space between who you were and what your life is becoming, don't rush to fix it. Don't rush to return. Because not everything that feels like loneliness is a problem. Some of it is transition. Some of it is growth finally taking shape. And if you can endure it long enough, you don't just become better. You become unrecognizable. And for the first time, you start to understand something most people never survive long enough to see. That becoming better is not the hard part. The hard part comes after the decision. When the initial motivation disappears. When discipline stops feeling new. When nothing external is pushing you anymore, and you are left alone with your habits. That is where most people break. Not at the beginning, but in the silence that follows. And in the next part of this journey, we need to talk about what really happens in that silence. Because the first 30 days of change are never what destroy people. It's what happens after the first 30 days. When your mind starts negotiating with you, that determines whether you change your life or quietly return to it.